Hello, shit. My name is Kevin Feige, and I'm very proud to announce that in 2026, we will be doing a movie about the bird from Iron Man 2. I am so tired of cinematic universes, man. And I mean, like, to be fair, having a bunch of unrelated movies come together to build up to one big movie with all of them in it was like the coolest shit of all time in 2012, and now it's become like the live service games of the movie industry. Marvel didn't invent the idea of a shared universe. The old Godzilla movies all take place in the same world. You got Alien vs. Predator, Freddy vs. Jason, but now everyone wants to do a cinematic universe. And now every movie studio has to have some dickhead show up with a slate with their next 15 years of movies that are never going to get made. And like, I don't even know what you're meant to call a cinematic universe these days, because apparently it just doesn't mean anything anymore. Like, movies that have sequels or spin-offs that directly tie into each other is not a cinematic universe, okay? I don't give a shit what the Sonic movies are saying. That is just how normal movies work. You are made of idiot. Like, I'm not calling the Karate Kid movies the Miyagi-verse, okay? This is called a franchise. None of you know what these words mean. But then, like, I guess on the other hand, would you call the Jurassic Park movies a cinematic universe? Because technically, while the Jurassic World movies are separate, they do have the old guys show up in them. So, like, you know, they do take place in the same universe. Like, I don't know what the criteria is supposed to be anymore, man. Like, what's the difference between a shared universe and a sequel? Does that make Star Wars a cinematic universe? I mean, okay, that's a bad example with the shows, but like, you get what I'm saying, right? I mean, you could argue that the Transformers movies and Friday the 13th are in the same universe because they both have some dude called Trent being played by the same actor, which is genuinely more of a connection than any of Sony's Spider-Man movies. Like, even Marvel has been kind of shitting itself lately, which I'm sure has nothing to do with the 87 TV shows they put out a year.
I won't do it, you can't face me! You can't!
Ever since Endgame, that shit's been like kind of all over the place. Like, they've been introducing so many characters and teams that after like 5 years still haven't met each other or been important in any way. Like, I don't know what any of this is meant to be setting up. I don't even know who the fucking Avengers are anymore. And it's not going to be as exciting when Shang-Chi teams up with Kingo when it's been half a decade. Anyway, the point is that like everyone is trying to copy what Marvel did, regardless of whether it's actually a cinematic universe or not, okay? And it seems like nobody can get this right. Like, we legit have enough to fill an entire graveyard's worth of failed cinematic universes that never made it past a few movies. So today, we're gonna have a look at them and laugh. But before we bully multi-billion-dollar movie studios, you ever look at your boring-ass walls and go like, this is great, but it'd be a lot better if it had a naked minion on it? Well, that's why this video was brought to you by Displate. Because when I was a stupid idiot kid, I used to buy a ton of paper posters that only took about 1 day to become wrinklier than an 87-year-old man. But Displates are made out of metal, which means that not only do they double as weapons, but also means they can comfortably brave the passage of time while still looking fresh as hell. Their site has over 2 million designs to choose from, which I don't even know how that's humanly possible, but they got everything from Call of Duty, DC, Marvel, Sonic, Squid Game, League of Legends, Rick and Morty, The Big Bang Theory, and we're not even halfway down the page yet. Genuinely, I think they have everything. Like, I wrote Gamer at Work posters as a joke, but then it turned out they actually have it. And with all of these, you can choose the size, the frame, and the type, like their brand new texture displays that have a premium finish and 3D printed details. And the best part, there's no more calling in an entire demolition crew to absolutely obliterate a single wall just because you wanted to put up a Shadow the Hedgehog poster. All you gotta do is chuck a magnet on your wall to immediately let the girl you're bringing over know that she's the first one. So make sure you head on over to the description and use my link for a very special discount. Thanks so much to Displate for making my background look a little less miserable. And now back to bullying Hollywood studio executives. We're not gonna find a better place to start than the DCEU, who was like the guy sitting next to Marvel in class copying their answers, but was also horribly illiterate. A cinematic universe with a list of cancelled projects and controversies about 70 times longer than anything they actually put out. I don't think there was ever a point where something wasn't going horribly wrong. Like, you know something's wrong with your movie universe when Jared Leto is one of the least mentally unstable actors.
What, we just got a joker like, good for you, these are my underpants.
I hope they're used.
The biggest problem with the DCEU is that by the time they got around to it, DC must have figured they were already like a few years behind Marvel. So they kind of just did the entire process backwards. Like, these guys were speed running during the Justice League, and like, to be fair, they did wait until their 5th movie, but that was only after doing a movie about like a completely unrelated team and only introducing us to like 3 of the 6 League members, and then worried about like doing movies about them later. So after their solo Superman movie, they made a follow-up where Batman shows up, and then they put the rest of the Justice League in a single scene of Wonder Woman browsing YouTube shorts on a laptop, and then went, yep, okay, we're ready to do the Avengers now. And I mean, to be fair, like, the exact same amount of time passed between them both doing their big team-up movie. It's just that Marvel had, like, you know, a plan. But then after that, it kind of just stopped being a cinematic universe. Like everything after Justice League was kind of just like its own thing. I think Batman showed up in Suicide Squad for like 2 seconds, and Superman got what, like a single line at the end of Black Adam and decapitated in Shazam, just to, you know, remind us that they exist, and that was it. Tony Stark was like the entire backbone of the early MCU, because even after the Avengers, they'd still had him show up in other movies so people kept up with his character, okay? This motherfucker was in like 10 of these things, alright? Meanwhile, DC benched their 2 biggest guys after the second time they showed up to make 3 movies about Harley Quinn. And if you're wondering, you know, why they didn't make a solo Batman movie, I mean, that was the plan, apparently. But you can tell it was going really great by the way that Ben Affleck looked like he wanted to fucking die anytime anyone asked him about it in interviews.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you are going to be directing Batman potentially?
You know, it's good to have dreams. It's nice to have dreams. I had a dream once.
And the thing was, they did have a plan, to be fair. Zack Snyder, who they brought on to make the first couple of movies, did have like this entire overarching story he was planning across his movies. But then the second that DC saw that Batman v Superman was not getting great reviews, they just scrapped all of it. So they had to basically like redo their entire cinematic universe like 3 movies in, which as you can see was not the greatest idea. Even at the very end of its life, they still couldn't do anything right because DC prematurely announced they were getting James Gunn to come in and redo everything before they had even finished putting out the last movies for the DCEU, which in James's defense is very funny, almost as funny as him coming in and deciding that only the things he made were going to be canon going forward, even though the entire old Justice League is in Peacemaker, but don't worry about it.
You're late, you fucking dickheads.
And so far, I think James is doing it right. I mean, they actually have a plan this time, which is good. That might be a little important. So fingers crossed for Superman, surely this time, baby.
Hola, bitches.
Then there's whatever Sony's doing. They're like contractually obligated Spider-Man adjacent cinematic universe where there's 6 movies in and not a single one has interacted with each other at all. This thing doesn't really have a name. Like even the Wikipedia page is struggling to work out what to call it. They started out naming it Sony's Marvel Universe, which okay. Then they shifted it to like Sony's Universe of Marvel Characters, the Smuck my dick, and it became Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters. The Spunk. I think this whole thing started out with Sony trying to bully their way into the MCU, with their entire business model just being to ape off the success of the real Marvel and hopefully confuse anyone that wasn't a chronically online Marvel nerd. Like there were even reports that like Sony forced Tom Holland to film a cameo for Venom, but then Kevin Feige showed up and went, no. So it was in its own universe, but also in the MCU, but not according to the people that actually make the MCU. And I mean, Sony kind of did get their way eventually with the post-credits for Venom 2 and No Way Home, where he has like a very brief field trip to the MCU, where the only things he does is lick Tom Holland and get an MCU lore dump from a bartender before he shits out a symbiote and then gets deported back to his dimension where the concept of a fresh Rotten Tomato score doesn't exist.
Hulk.
Yeah, and you thought Lethal Protector was a shit name.
Yeah, because it is.
So, I mean, yeah, it technically is MCU now, but like in the same way that like your racist uncle is a part of the family, okay? We just don't want to talk about it. Sony outright said they didn't want to have anyone like overseeing the whole universe like a Kevin Feige. They were just going to let their filmmakers cook, which I mean, sounds like a good idea. But then what you end up with is like a bunch of these directors saying they just don't give a shit about making it a shared universe. And then you got like the Craven director being like so publicly embarrassed to be associated with this shit that he actually had to be like, please guys, I swear, this one's going to be good, trust me. So Sony's original plan way back when was to use the Amazing Spider-Man 2 as a backdoor to set up a bunch of spin-offs. I don't know if you noticed, they were pretty subtle about it. But after they realized that they were really bad at making movies, they cut a deal with Disney to have a shared custody arrangement with Spider-Man, which meant that he could go hang out with all the other superheroes, but Sony couldn't go off and make movies about him on their own, okay? But they could make Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man in it. And after the Venom movie made almost $1 billion, that made Sony think that these dumb shits would watch literally anything. So they decided to follow it up with their other most popular characters, like Morbius and El Muerto and Hypno Hustler. Yeah, no, I wish I was making that up. But there's been a recent development, because it turns out they could have used Spider-Man the entire time. So yeah, they couldn't make a Spider-Man movie without Disney, but they could have him show up in any of these other movies at any time. And they said their reasoning for not having him in them was because they thought that people wouldn't want to see that. What? And like, I really want to believe that even they're not that stupid, but we are talking about the people that like unironically wanted to do a fucking Ghostbusters cinematic universe. So, and look, I can read as many poorly written Screen Rant articles as I want, but I don't think we're ever really going to know what the actual deal was. I don't think even Sony knows what's going on. They just keep bringing up how the Spider-Verse movies are still doing really well. And you know why? Because they have fucking Spider-Man in them. Anyway, last year, the newest and hopefully final additions to the Spamuck both bombed horribly, so it looks like Sony finally got the message. So I think we might finally be free. I just can't believe that after 6 years, Sony has still not learned that their formula of like making an entire movie, setting shit up for a sequel that's never gonna get made is so fucking annoying. Madam Web is like a 2-hour origin story for a bunch of Spider Women who wear their costumes for 2 seconds. Kraven doesn't put on his iconic Kraven fit until the last minute of the movie, and even in Venom 3, they were hyping up Null as this big bad, and this motherfucker doesn't even get out of his chair for the whole movie. I think they're still doing like a Spider Noir show with Nick Cage this year or something that's apparently somehow still meant to be a part of whatever the hell this all is, which, not gonna lie, actually sounds kind of cool. But like, if the entire point of these dog-ass movies is to set up an eventual Sinister Six movie, then why are they so bad at it? In Venom 3, Venom fucking kills himself in an acid bath, and then Rhino dies at the end of Kraven. Like, there's not even a scene like setting up that he's gonna come back in like a sequel. He is just like actually a corpse now.
I won't forget you, buddy.
But hey, it could be worse, because at least Sony got to make more than one movie. How can we not talk about the time when Universal had the incredible idea of making a cinematic universe out of their old monster movies from 1 billion years ago, just like the good old days? And what were they gonna call it? The Dark Universe. So they put out the first entry to the Dark Universe in 2017 with The Mummy, which was so focused on setting up a cinematic universe that they kind of forgot to just actually make a good movie.
I'm not interested in that at all.
Where like literally half the runtime is spent setting up their S.H.I.E.L.D. equivalent, Prodigium, and Russell Crowe as Jekyll and Hyde. Tom Cruise even like gets mummy powers at the end. But like, now that none of this is gonna go anywhere, what you're left with is like the Concord of movies. I just love that like, instead of trying again or giving it like, you know, one more shot, they just immediately gave up. And so the world lost out on a team made out of a Channing Tatum Van Helsing, Johnny Depp Invisible Man, and Dwayne Johnson Wolfman. On the bright side though, they have found a bit more success in making a bunch of smaller, unrelated Tom Cruise-less monster movies instead, so, you know, love that for them. Alright, so we've had a look at the big ones, but I thought we should still look at some of the little guys that people either just do not give a shit about or never got their chance to flourish. You got the Conjuring universe, which again, is really just a bunch of spin-offs of the Conjuring movies, but whatever, I don't care anymore, man. There was Scoob. Remember Scoob?
Dick.
Which was definitely trying to set up some kind of Hanna-Barbera universe by having the Mystery Gang team up with whoever the fuck Blue Falcon is. Where the plot, if I remember it, was that Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races goes to hell to resurrect his dog, and is also canonically Simon Cowell. Yeah, I can't believe that didn't go anywhere. Who's excited for WB's King Arthur cinematic universe? Yeah, that's what I thought. Apparently they had a whole, like, 6-movie plan for it, too. And there was just one major problem with that absolutely no one gave a shit. Oh, and the Monsterverse, of course. But, like, I don't know how much you can call this, like, a cinematic universe when it's, like, literally only Godzilla and Kong movies. Like, I know everyone wants to hype up the Monsterverse as being, like, the best one out of any of these. But, like, guys, your entire universe is, like, 2 dudes, okay? The Monsterverse is definitely just making shit up as they go along. But I actually think that's, like, one of the best things about it. Because it means that it's, like, super easy to get into since they only make, like, one of these every few years. And, I mean, there's, like, a few humans and plot threads that carry over from one to the other. But, you know, there's like a mutual agreement between the writers and the audience that like absolutely no one gives a shit about the plot. Like, it definitely started out as being a bit more like Marvel with how they had the post-credits of Kong Skull Island when they had Godzilla and Ghidorah show up, which was maybe one of the happiest moments of my entire life. And like, now that the future of the Monsterverse looks like it's just gonna be like 57 Godzilla and Kong movies, I don't know how much more of a cinematic universe it's really gonna be. And I mean, I guess they did do that Monarch show that was kind of like its own thing, but like, when are we getting that Solo Jet Jaguar movie, bro? Come on. Oh, and finally, do you remember that absolutely dogshit Winnie the Pooh horror movie that came out a couple years ago? So after the first movie came out, the guy immediately started talking about how he was going to do a cinematic universe of these shitty public domain horror movies. And I thought he was joking, but no, he was actually serious. He like busted out a whole slate and everything. Like, just this year, they're making like a Peter Pan one, Bambi, I think Pinocchio as well. And all of this is meant to be leading up to Pooniverse Monsters Assemble. And you know what? Why is that still more well thought out than the entire DCEU? Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you guys so much for watching me do a video about stuff I've pretty much talked about before at length. And I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good night. Love you. Mwah.